mean this, so just be aware that there are people in the outside world that will hear what you have to say. So if you want to,
I've heard you or seen you several times.
okay, well, good.
My son-in-law has a network. He's interviewed you a couple times.
Scott Aaron Rodgers.
Yes,
I don't know why, but I always use all three of his names.
that's how he listed it.
Yeah.
I guess, maybe to not confuse other people. I think Rogers is kind of the well, not popular, but a name.
A common name.
Common name, yeah.
Well, very good. Okay.
So,
I thought I'd start by just doing a quick introduction of myself. Obviously, I'm Brad Meyer, and I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives. I spent 25 years in manufacturing leadership roles here in Indiana in a variety of industries. And then I spent the last 9 years as an electromagnetic warfare expert for the Navy, which we have another EW here, which is unusual, more common here in Bloomington than it is in other places in the district. When Trump won the election, I went to my wife, and I was a civilian employee of the Navy, and there's a law called the Hatch Act that limits what you can say and do politically. And even inside of those constraints, most people try to stay pretty far back from that so they don't get in trouble, don't engage much in politics. So when Trump won, I told my wife, I said, I've got 7 more years before we can take retirement. I just need to keep my head down and my mouth shut. Then after he took office, within a couple of weeks, I said, I'm not going to make it 7 years, but I got to get 1 more year and I can take early retirement. And then a couple of months later, I went to her and said, I have to quit my job. And she said, well, what happened? And I said, well, he fired the board of the Kennedy Center, which now seems like a really small thing, frankly, compared to all the other crazy things that have happened. But what it's really about is when powerful people begin constraining and specifying what is an acceptable and unacceptable speech, we're in real trouble. And it was clear when he did that many of the things that he said he was going to do, he was going to do. I quit my job, and I've been running for the last 9 months. We've had 2 universal health care or Medicare for all forums, 5 roundtable discussions with subject matter experts, and 15 to 17 town halls. This is the second here in Bloomington. And one of the things that has come out of that, I've asked people, what are you worried about? And the number one answer I'm getting is everything. I'm worried about everything. And we hear, I'm worried about the economy or affordability. I'm worried about what they're doing with education. I'm worried about healthcare. But the main thing that people are worried about is like everything. Right? We're just headed in the wrong direction. So that's kind of where I'm trying to focus the discussion, is that this is primarily an election about the future direction of the country. And all these other things are reflections of those different issues. I'm not going to go through all of my positions up front. Hopefully during the course of discussion, those will come out and we can talk about the things that you're interested in. But I will plug up front that I am a strong proponent of Medicare for all. I am also more activist than the average candidate in that I believe that we're not going to win by being timid and making small suggestions that only tinker around the edges. We really need we need to stand up for our priorities and our values and attract people to us instead of trying to blend in with the people that are causing these problems. So that's a thumbnail sketch of me and my background. Um, Anybody want to throw out the first pitch of things to talk about? This is always the hard part, is getting the first one on the table. What are you? What's keeping you up at night?
Money. Probably the economy is a big one. The way things are kind of spiraling. I know the war is a disaster, and that has kind of made the economy worse
Mhm.
than it already was. So, what are your thoughts on these kinds of things?
My first thought is that everything that you said is true. I want to foot stomp one sentence that you had in there in particular. If the war didn't exist, if Project 2025 didn't exist, that would put us back at 2024, when the average 30-year-old is not doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. People were going bankrupt because of health issues. In fact, 70% of bankruptcies include healthcare debt, and about 80% of people that are carrying healthcare debt have health insurance, which means health insurance is not protecting people from debt. Right? People are having trouble getting into their first house. So we're in a position that it's getting worse, but even if the last year to year and a half went away, we have real systemic problems. We need real relief on that. And one of the things that maybe differentiates me from others is that there is injustice, and there is the K-shaped economy, and there is an imbalance of power, and the 1% or the billionaire class does exist, and there are abuses. But I try to start by looking at what's going on with the 99%. Let's ignore for just a moment, just ignore that these people exist. And what is, if you look at the distribution of wealth, what does that look like? And about 8% of us are at the poverty level. Right? And what I want to do is have policies that, instead of taking money away, which I'm not saying we don't need to tax these people more. I'm saying, instead of taking money away from these people and giving it to these people, I want to change the economic rules so that these people earn more on their own, and that curve shifts up so that fewer people are in need of aid, and the people that need aid can continue to get aid. So I'm advocating for a $20 an hour minimum wage. I'm advocating for the first $20,000 to be tax-free. And there's a cap on, there's rules on who can get overtime and who can't get overtime. And I want to increase that cap so more people get covered under overtime. And these are examples of policies that are really about helping people make more of their own money. It's not about financial transfer. The other thing is that just conceptually, we need to start by thinking about what kind of a society do we want, what makes sense, what's sustainable, what's in our best interest, and then how do we fund it? Because one of the things that we don't talk about a lot, and honestly doesn't come up in these discussions, is the national debt is a looming crisis. So we're going to have to pay for whatever we want going forward. So if we want economic policies that are going to help people, how do we fund that? And how do we fund it in a way that doesn't choke off the economy and cut down on business? Because if you want to help the people in this distribution, if you damage the ability for jobs to be created, then you're not in the long run helping them. You're just making them more dependent. Anyway, so that's a very long answer, and that's my way, and I'm sorry.
That's good.
Okay. You're thinking.
Yeah, I'm curious what the steps are to get to $20 an hour minimum wage, especially in Indiana, when, it's at 75.
Right.
For the federal minimum wage, so does that take changing the federal minimum wage?
Yes.
Or are you gonna, work across the aisle within the state to increase that? And then if we do that, is that gonna hinder small business owners when that increase happens?
Well, I'm running for the federal Congress, so that would be where I would be operating from. So it would be a federal thing. What they have done historically with the minimum wage is, if this is the real minimum wage, this is where people are being paid. They set the minimum wage below that and say, we've helped people. And then and this has been going on, so we set it at $7.75 or whatever it is. And the real minimum wage has been drifting up, and it's probably more like, I don't know, maybe $10 an hour, that if you're paying $10 an hour, you can't get workers. So the effective minimum wage, the economic minimum wage, is higher than the legal. And then what they do is when the gap gets big enough, then they increase the legal minimum wage and say, I've helped you, but it's still not doing anything. It's really not affecting anyone. What I'm talking about is we need policies that actually make a difference in people's lives, where you can actually keep a roof over your head if you're working 40 hours. So that would be a federal minimum wage change to prevent an economic shock. It would probably have to be phased in over a period of time. There'll probably have to be some rules about during a probationary period. You start out at some wage, and then by the end of a 90-day probationary period, the minimum that you can pay them is $20 an hour. Right. One of the things that will help is, you talk about, what's the impact on businesses? One of the biggest expenses right now that businesses have with labor is healthcare. Right? So if you convert it to a Medicare for all, that relieves a lot of the burden off of employers to worry about that. In the long run, universal health care on average costs about 40% less, in some cases 50% less than what we're paying. So there is an opportunity for us to actually save money by going to a universal health care. And it also relieves a lot of cost burden off of businesses, especially small businesses.
Are you hopeful for universal healthcare to pass within legislation? Is there any efforts in the past? It's, as a person that hasn't had health insurance for 2 decades, because of the cost, and that includes pregnant children, and self-pay, crossing our fingers that I think
Big happens.
but have watched to see, proposals for such. Curious what the steps would be that would be different to help.
There's a couple of things. I'm a member of an organization called Physicians for a National Health Program. I'm not a doctor, but I'm a member of Physicians for a National Health Program because I believe strongly in it. At this point, for the first time, 50% of doctors are in favor of a national health plan. They're in favor of a single payer system because they see that the current system is not sustainable. That's a big thing. The AMA and other professional organizations have historically fought tooth and nail against this. And now half of their members are in favor of it. So this is a big shift. I also think that the shock of the attack on the Affordable Care Act has woken some people up, that they see that their health care could be put at risk again, and that the existing system really isn't working for them. There's a bill that's been put up, I think, every year for, I don't know, the past X number of years to move us toward a national health plan. And it gets shot down. A majority of people in the United States are in favor of it. The only place that has strong objection to it is in Congress. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be easy and we'll wave a magic wand and it's just going to happen. I'm saying that I need to get in there and I need to start fighting for it and advocating for it. Because if we don't start putting people in that are in favor of it, we're never going to get it. Right? I don't think that there will be a big enough spread for a veto proof in the next 2 years. Right? So we have 2 years to get ready and then get it pushed through. And then the other question is, which you didn't ask, but I'm going to offer it anyway, is, okay, great, we got it. What does that look like? Right? How do you actually implement that? England implemented it in 6 years. And 3 of those years, they were still fighting the Germans. So it's doable. We implemented Medicare on 3x5 index cards in the 1960s, and we did it in a year. And all the reasons that they lay out, I'm going to talk with my hands, we can't do it because of this, and we can't do it because of this, and we can't do it because of this. They said the exact same things about Medicare. It won't work. It's gonna screw up with doctors, and we're gonna have these problems. And there's strong lobbies against it. And we got it through Congress. We got it signed by the president, and we implemented it in 1 year. And now that we have that system, the plan that's been put forward recommends a 3-year implementation. And the first year is, I think, primarily getting systems and processes and methods in place. The second year begins enrollment to the most needy people. And then the third year, we complete the enrollment. Right? And I think didn't Mexico just sign off? Okay. So it's, you got to be an optimist to run as a Democrat in Southern Indiana. So I am an optimist, okay? But I'm not an idealist. This is going to be hard work. but we have to start. You say you've gone a long time without health care?
Well, we're 13 years. Well, probably. And curious, but yeah, as a family, we something because we calculate our costs annually for what we pay compared to what plans we get. It's about the same.
It's kind
It's
of,
tough. I mean, we don't do preventative care, you know, all through on those things. But yeah, I mean, it's for my age demographic, it's really one of the challenging things, especially being in South Central Indiana. You unless you're working for a major corporation, it's not offered.
right.
And then because of state minimum wage, we're not making as much as say we could in Illinois because their minimum wage is almost double what our growth is. And yeah, it's a challenge. And then follow up on that question is, okay, so we go for doing something. How do we overcome the insurance companies who are so tied up in what they need them, what they need, the Affordable Care Act policies? You know, how does the Democratic Party overcome the lobbyists from that are paying all these monies for the contracts that they end up getting? It's
Go ahead. Yeah.
what
Say it.
keeps me up.
Yeah.
And not from me, but because I'm fortunate enough that we can't talk. I'm not declaring bankruptcy because of my medical bills. You know, we budget that, but I'm very fortunate for that. I know that most people are not, and most of those people probably would, you know, be qualified for Medicaid, but then the process and the hoops you have to jump through for that are also very challenging. So I know you know, I don't.
I'm listening.
How it works in the state of is, you know, especially and federally, but in the state of Indiana.
Susie, were you going to say something? You drew a breath.
Sorry,
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I was curious too about the insurance companies and how to bring them on board. And I just wanted to reinforce that as a small employer, I had 300 employees at one point in time, and health insurance was our second largest expense, right behind salaries. And if I had been able to use that, and we spent that on not great coverage, I mean, it's still, you know, $2,000-3,000. And you would have provided more, and I would have provided more if we could afford it as a nonprofit. And thinking about being able to put that amount of money into wages would have made a huge difference, not only in the ability to pay people, but also to improve the quality of care to the people that we serve people with disabilities. And so, you know, it was really, really frustrating not to be able to pay more and to get people that were going to stick around. So I think that's spot on when you talk about employers' ability to take that money and put it in people's pockets.
I think that
Go ahead.
begs a strategic question. That the irony of what you describe your own situation is, I reckon that's true of tens of thousands of families in this district.
Oh, yeah.
The majority of them, by past election results, are hard-coded red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there's nothing that's going on happening in the federal government today, in my mind, benefits any of us out here, much less folks in that situation where you're one disaster or whatever, you're one medical incident away from disaster, or you're one job problem away from not being able to put food on the table. How do you, as a guy who wanted to join the 430 some of them up there, how do you see flipping? How do you see convincing all these folks we're suffering evil,
But don't see it.
but don't politically see it. I mean, I see it every, I occasion drive, you know, statement. And I mean, you just drive through this everywhere you go.
Your question and her question are really the same sides of the same coin,
Yeah.
or different sides of the same coin. The question is, how do we get the votes? And how do we get to the point that it works? And for me, the answer is there is enough suffering and enough people that are at risk that we can get the votes, and we have to get the votes. You know, the big thing about change is change doesn't happen until people are more afraid of staying where they are than making the risk to move to something new. Right? And there's a lot of people in Southern Indiana that are at that point or past that point where they go, I've got to make a change, but I don't have any way of making that change happen. You know, the Republicans have clearly come out against anything that's going to improve our medical system. And many of the Democrats that run want to try to be as soft as possible, thinking that that's the way they're going to get votes. So if somebody like you is in a situation where they go, I can't take this anymore, something has got to change, you don't have anybody to vote for. You have somebody that has definitely said no, and somebody that has said, we just got to go slow. And they've been saying we got to go slow for 80 years. So what do you do in that situation? And my answer is we have to have a real alternative. And the real alternative is universal nonprofit health care. And I'm coming out clearly for it. And if you and the tens of thousands of people that are stuck today want to get out of it, then they really need to vote for me, and I'll fight for it in Congress. And part of that fighting is finding alliances to help overcome that insurance industry capture that we're in, right? The fact that half of medical doctors are in favor of it, that's going to continue to increase. And we can get the medical community on our side. A majority is going to be in favor of this, or is in favor of this. We just got to get people elected that are willing to vote for it. You know, one of the things you were talking about, you know, not being able to get it through your job, and I have car insurance, but I don't get my car insurance through my job. It doesn't depend on my employment status, right? Nancy has just come in, and we spent a lot of time talking about this, that a lot of people say, well, it's a right. Healthcare is a right. And in this country, it's not a right. I mean, it is legally not a right. What Nancy has coached me to help me to in my framing, it's a human need. We all need healthcare. We all need to have that base of support so that we don't go broke or die if we get sick. In the long run, the easiest way, not the easiest way. In the short run, we have to get the Affordable Care Act strengthened so that more people can get back on it and get protected and covered. We have to stabilize the hospitals. And then we have to get universal health care. And then we have to have a constitutional amendment that makes it a right, so they can't ever take it away from us again. And that's that's the chain of events that needs to happen. And it's going to be a tough road to hoe. You were talking about healthcare and calculating what the costs are. Some years ago, I had this lump in my throat off to the side. I went to my primary physician, and he said, he poked around a little bit. He said, "Yeah, you need somebody to look at that." I said, "No crap, that's why I'm here." And he said, "No, Brad, you need somebody to look at that." And it turned out that I had thyroid cancer, and I went through 3 surgeries and a round of um, uh, radioactive iodine treatment and multiple tests and scans and surveillance, and all in, I think that we paid, I'm going to make up a number because I didn't really keep track, but maybe $4,000 or $5,000 for all of those surgeries, all of those tests, all of the things that I went through. It wasn't bad at all. I had good insurance. My daughter, and then when I quit my job, we went to my wife's insurance, and my daughter had a problem, and she went to the emergency room and got one of the type of scans that I got out of the many that I had, and it was about $4,000 for one visit with insurance. And this system is intolerable. So, yes.
We got 2 questions from online.
Okay.
It's, how do you feel about children working at the age of 14 years of age?
That's an interesting question. On farms, there is, I believe in the current labor law, kids are allowed to work with limitations on farms. And then there is progressive rules on what is allowed for labor. I did odd jobs when I was a kid for money, but we worked really hard to minimize child labor through legislation, because kids ought to be in school and kids ought to be kids. Unfortunately, in many families, they're living so close to the edge that right now their kids working is part of the family income. And we need to get to the point that that is not the case. So.
The next question is, I want to know if Brad has taken money from APEC, whether he wants there to be a new war powers resolution or reform, whether a declaration of war is required to make war on Iran, given that they weren't attacking our territory at the time, as required by the War Powers Act, whether aid to Israel.
Hold on, one question at a time. One question. What's the first question? APAC money. No, I have not taken APAC money. I'm not going to take APAC money, and I seriously doubt that they would be interested in giving it to me based on my previous comments.
Then the next one would be whether a declaration of war is required, or there should be a war powers resolution or reform.
Yes, there needs to be reform. The issue that I have is that the War Powers Act was put in place because a president needs the latitude to be able to move quickly and be decisive in the presence of a threat. All presidents up to this point have sometimes nudged up against that a little bit, but generally respected it. There was authorization for Obama to do the things that Obama did from Congress. There was authorization right or wrong for the Afghan war and the Iraq war, because the president went to Congress and said, I need authorization to do this because it is a big commitment of resources and endangering our soldiers and sailors. The problem really is we have a commander-in-chief that has no interest in our democratic processes. So he's doing whatever he can and should and wants to. And he has, with the Iran war, crossed a line that he should be impeached and removed. It's just that simple. And I feel strongly about this because what he's doing in our name, we are responsible for. And he did not give us an opportunity to weigh in and agree or disagree. Congress has completely failed in their responsibility to force that. Congress needs to stand up and either vote for the war and fund it, or vote against the war and defund it and require it to stop. What they've done is that they've kind of did a mealy mouth thing where they voted, but it really, they didn't say, yes, I approve this, and then have to run on it and have to, they just said, I didn't stop it, which is different than you either have to approve or disapprove. You can't just be squishy about the whole thing. So.
Same person wants to know whether or not you think that aid to Israel should be conditional based on their behavior with Gaza.
All aid should be conditional based on whether what's happening is consistent with our values and our priorities and our interests. I believe that the only long-term solution is going to be a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. I believe that today it is almost impossible to see how that path would move forward today under the current circumstances. But that's where it's going to need to be if there's ever going to be peace in that region. What we have right now is we have these waves of violence and then repression, and then violence and repression and violence and repression, and on it goes. So we just finished one round of repression, and there will be a ceasefire for a while, and then pressure will build again, and there will be another round of violence. This is not in the long-term best interest of the United States or Israel. It's certainly not the Palestinians. Anybody else thinking about anything?
Can you explain APAC?
Okay. There is a lobby called APAC. It is a pro-Israeli lobby. It is extremely well-funded. It is extremely effective in the United States. The question is very hot among many Democrats because AIPAC, when you accept money from a lobby, it's with the understanding that you are aligned with their interests. Okay. And many Democrats, myself included, I'm not aligned with AIPAC. And that's why I wouldn't take money for them. And that's why they wouldn't give me money either. An inefficient use of their resources. Having said that, not taking money from AIPAC doesn't mean I'm against the long-term best interest of Israel. It just means I think that we need to be focused on fostering where we can a two-state solution. And that is, I don't think, on the agenda for AIPAC. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I recently was listening to NPR, and it was an interview. They were discussing about the potential for AI to, like, a pathway, like they were explaining a hypothetical pathway for AI to have be granted personhood. Because Citizens United, corporations are considered a person or people, although, in my opinion, unless a corporation is ever, convicted and sent to prison, I don't believe that they're not a person. But however, this person in the interview was explaining that AI could become so self-aware that they could create their own corporation and seek to attain every granted personhood in that way. How do you propose that we regulate AI? I know it's already like.
No. This is a real question, and there are a lot of issues related to AI. Right? One of them is the effects that it can have socially. One of them is the effects that it will have economically with jobs. And then there's the legal question of how do we deal with something that has become self-aware? And there are lots of movies on why that's a bad idea to have an AI become self-aware. All of those things need proper regulation to protect society. One of them is that we need to be very careful and thoughtful, and we need proper regulation around the idea of the use of AI as companions and emotional surrogates. We're already seeing the division or the isolation of people, and what the social isolation is really doing to our society and undermining it. So we need to limit that. We also need to limit, one of the things that's going to come up, I think, before that is the use of AI in decision making in life and death decisions. Okay, so the military has what they call a kill chain, where you find, fix, track, and prosecute. And there's a human in that loop that says, okay, electronically, I see that we've gotten a target that is a threat, and then a person has to make that decision, almost always. And there are people that will argue that that can be done faster by a computer, and it can. And it's not appropriate, right? So there's a lot of, we need to be very thoughtful about how we use it. And obviously, the courts have done a good job of limiting the idea of a personal assignment to other entities I'm talking about, like animals don't have the same rights as humans do, and AI certainly does not have rights. It's a hammer. It's a tool to be used. It is not distinct.
Maybe we need a constitutional amendment that clearly defines personhood.
Well, where is she? A friend of mine sitting there has pointed out and reminded me that we do have a constitutional amendment that is still in the works, that is to codify the absolute rights of women to have equal rights. And that has been mired and stuck for years. Yeah, so I can see why, and the only thing left to do for that is for Congress to act. The states have already ratified. We have enough states' rights. It just has to be a new act of Congress in order for that to become an amendment to the Constitution. I don't think we would need a constitutional amendment. I think it can be a simple law. Because it does, we the people begins with people. And I think they could shoot it down. They wouldn't have to read too much further. You're thinking again. What are you thinking? We should play poker. This would be good for me.
But I think that there is a demographic that truly wants AI to have person and really wants to give those rights, wants no regulation. I mean, our Department of War was aiming to have no regulation and there was, I don't know, the AI company that refused and stepped away and they have been applauded for it. When there are no regulations and they want to just keep going and going, it's been admitted, not necessarily AI, but social media, like all, and then it's embedded in everything, right? Even if we don't want it on our cell phones, on that we might have, it's already in there. So if it's growing by those leaps and bounds, and there's a want for it, a demand for it, then how without a constitutional amendment and laws might do it, but people love to break laws.
They love what?
To break laws.
Yeah.
And when schools are trying to implement not having cell phones, there's that pushback, and we've seen how amazing kids do without that technology. I think it's a great question, and I think that it should be amended as well. But I think it's going to take leaders watching the research and seeing the data for the effect on society as a whole, on a micro and macro level. So that, yeah, so
You are 100% correct.
how do our leaders protect us? If the leaders of that industry can't even really quantify what's happening.
Well, there's a question that there's an assumption underneath that question, which I don't know is valid. And what's underneath that is an assumption that our current leaders want to protect us. Okay, and it's a really important question, because I'm not sure, I don't believe that is true in the current environment. The economic policies that have been put forward, and this happened before this administration, it's been happening for many years. The economic policies that have been put forward put us at a disadvantage, and it is clear that that the motivations of Congress are not in our best interest. So again, you talk about the distribution of wealth, you talk about the 99%, and you talk about the 1% out here. If this distribution was above the poverty, was well above the poverty line, and we were living comfortably, and it was stable or improving, okay, you could make that assumption. But it's been slipping for some time. It's getting worse. We're getting a situation where for healthcare, for aid for the poor, and a variety of other things, they're making it more intentionally complex. They are intentionally overloading the people that are supposed to be administering it, or they're gutting oversight, and they're making it denial based. I don't believe at this point that the assumption that they are working in our best interest is true. So I'm going to take I said I was an optimist, but I'm going to take just one moment and be a pessimist. What do we do in a situation in which there is this pressure, there is an interest by some to get advantage by claiming personhood or get other advantage, when we have a Congress that is not inclined to act in our best interest? That's why this election is so important. Okay. Anyway, so this is a rare instance that you'll find me much more pessimistic than I am on a lot of other topics.
We started with mine, the Department of Education, the dismantling of the Department of Education, and they're saying that they're going to send it back to the states. The thing is, the Department of Education has so many responsibilities, from regulating, curriculum, safety measures in the schools, and distributing the funding. So if we don't have that entity, and public education is fundamental to every aspect of our life, everything for the rest of our life. There's no career that can be attained without some form of education. Can you say it will be a priority of yours to protect public education in the Department of Education?
Absolutely. Education, as you said, is the basis of our society. One of the things that, we were talking earlier about people, excuse me, across the district, financially struggling, and if we want business to come back into those areas, if we want businesses to grow, if they want there to be jobs, they need a workforce that is educated that can do that. Our current state government is working very hard to privatize education. And it's not working real well. So what do you do in a situation where you've got a plan and it's not working, and you have an independent body that is telling people it's not working? You undermine and discredit that public body, and that public body for education is the Department of Education. That's why they're gutting it. They're gutting it so that we will not see and understand what they're doing to our public education system. Especially in rural Indiana, southern Indiana. A lot of the charter schools and all of these things that people are saying, we're going to privatize education, it's going to be better. that really is not working its way out into the countryside. It's in the bigger cities. So, if you say, well, we're gonna change this, and I can drive my kid across town from, we were in Noblesville, we could drive to Carmel years ago and get a Carmel education, which the Carmel school systems are very good. They're very well funded. Okay, fine. But if you're in Bloomfield, you can't, there's no choice down there. I mean, so we need to invest in the option that is there, and make that stronger. The Department of Education, this is the frustrating thing about the attacks on the Department of Education. They do four things. Number one, they provide information to people about how their school systems are doing, an independent scoring of how their schools are doing. Number two, they help with, I think, funding and also scoring and evaluation of new and alternative education projects and methods, right? Number three, they provide funding for things like Pell Grants. I believe they administer some of the student loan programs, or at least they did. They also funnel money for people with to help people with disabilities get a good education. That and well, all right, so I'll pull that thread here in a minute. And then the last thing, the fourth thing they do is they enforce civil rights to ensure that all people of all races and all areas get a fair and equal education. How can you be against those four things? I mean, what is it about those four things that you can say, boy, I really don't want that? Okay. And the reason is because they don't like the answers that are coming out. And if you're not getting the answers you want, then you just undercut them. And that's what's really going on. We had a question?
Yeah. What is your response to all the data centers and some of the special treatment that we see?
I always pause when I want to think about what I say before I say it. I am against irresponsible implementation of data centers. And there's a lot of reasons that they would want to be irresponsible, because it's cheaper to use prime farmland because it's flat and it's already graded. It's cheaper to use copious amounts of water. It's cheaper not to treat that water. It is cheaper to push off electrical costs on other people. It's cheaper to be irresponsible. We need laws and regulations that prevent that type of irresponsible behavior. Most of that is a state issue. The thing that is really a problem, there's a couple of things. Number one, right now, today, there isn't legislation or regulatory definition of what good looks like. So if we had a definition of what good looks like, then we could say, do you meet these requirements? And part of that is, number one, we need a definition of what good looks like, what a responsible implementation would look like. And then number two, companies need to put forward a plan, on how they're going to implement that. And then we need to have oversight that verifies that they're actually following through. Because it has not been uncommon that a company will come in and will make promises and then not follow through with those promises, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. Most of this is state level permitting. And the thing that really bothers me about the way that it's being implemented is the non-disclosure agreements with local governments should be banned. It is completely unacceptable in my mind that local governments would sign non-disclosure agreements that will keep information out of the hands of the citizens so the citizens can make decisions about what they want in their communities. I think that is one of the biggest things that, I mean, I know there's a lot of things that people want changed about data centers, but that from a structural and systemic point of view, the doing things under the cloak of darkness is a real problem. And is part of the reason that these data centers come in and part of the reason that people are resisting them, because they have not had a chance to weigh in to ensure that they're good corporate citizens.
We got another question. Do you plan on fighting for cannabis legalization for adults 21, same as alcohol, tobacco? If so, how do you make sure this happens in Indiana? Sorry for this question, but
Absolutely, I am in favor of legalization of cannabis. I am not a user of it. And after it's legalized, I'm not having any plans of being a habitual user of it. But, and I was going to say, but you can, but then that would maybe cast something upon you and your character that is not appropriate. We learned during Prohibition that we need to be really thoughtful about what we need to limit the things that we limit in human behavior. And it's something that there's been experiments state by state. And at this point, my biggest issue is what's going to become of the tax revenue in the state of Indiana. And what they'll probably end up doing is, instead of making the state better and stronger, they will move it to the general fund, and they will reduce property taxes again, which will get them more votes. But we will still have some of the dirtiest water in the country. We will still have a lot of the problems that we're facing. So if it's going to be legalized in Indiana, then that tax revenue needs to be used for something that's going to make us stronger, instead of just a tax break so they can get more votes.
We have another question in the chat room. It's not really clear. She's asking clean air, water, and soil, the breaking of these policies. And I'm assuming what she wants here is what you intend to do to get this back in line.
They have gutted the EPA, and I'm gonna go off-roading a little bit, and then I'm gonna come right back. They've gutted the EPA. They're really distorting Health and Human Services and the FDA, and basically anything that is put in place to help or protect us, they're undermining. Anything that strengthens them, they're doubling down on. The Environmental Protection Agency has an important job to do, and there are a lot of people that don't like it, and that's a good it's a good indication that they're actually doing their job, because if they're, it can't be their job to be loved by everybody. It has to be their job to protect clean air, clean water, and soil, and have an environment that we can live in. And we forget how bad it can get if we don't have an EPA, if we don't have people looking out for us. One of the reasons that the Clean Water Act went through is that the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. When a river catches on fire, you ask, how bad does it have to get in order for us to, be in favor of clean water? Rivers have to catch on fire, and we're headed back that way.
It's bad in Bloomington, where from our lake and everything, I know in our house, my husband and I, our water doesn't taste good. And so we just started buying bottled water. So here we are going out buying bottled water, bottled water, Sam's Club, like the 40s, having paid for water that we're already paying for that's no good. And we don't trust.
You on city or well?
City.
City water. Okay.
It's so weird. It just doesn't taste good.
Yeah, so Indiana has some of the dirtiest rivers and streams in the country. We have a real problem. And, you talk about, Ellen, you're the person that wrote in was talking about it. Honestly, I knew that there were problems, but for a long time, it's been in my peripheral vision, right? While, I've been, and this is one of the reasons that there are some people that I'm running against, frankly, they say it's all about the economy. It's the economy, it's the economy, it's the economy. And the reason that I keep saying, take a step back, there's a bigger picture, it's not just about the economy. Economy is hugely important, but if you can't drink your water, that's a problem, right? If you can't go fishing and eat the fish, that's a problem, okay? If you're in a situation in which when my ancestors came to Indiana in, I think 1836, it was part of the largest hardwood forest in the world. And my ancestors and their friends cut most of it down. And we have only, I think, a couple thousand acres of old growth forest left here in Indiana. Most of the woods that you see are only about 100 years old or so. So, if all we do is focus on the question of jobs, which is hugely important, we will find that we can't drink our water and we can't breathe our air and we don't have an environment in which we can enjoy. Life is about more than just your job.
Speaking about like some of these old growth forests, one of the forests here in Indiana, and I think it's the Dean Wilderness, they have the most variety of salamander. They have more variety of salamander species of salamanders, or variety than they have in the Amazon, and we don't know that. And so we don't know that we should be protecting this practice is so precious. We don't learn that. We don't even know.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So he has 2 more years and you'll be in there for these next 2 years. How do we reestablish EPA during these next 2 years?
Reestablish the what?
How do we reconstitute the destiny of these last 2 years?
We
Is
have.
that possible to still?
We have to win back the House. We need to win back the Senate. I've heard people say, well, there's not much we can do because even if we win back the House, it's not going to be by a huge majority, right? And while we're wringing our hands saying we can't do it even if we win back the House, with a very narrow majority, have to be in Bloomington. Is that a true statement?
On the border, we do well, we focus on the computer software and hardware actually. It's not very hard. As well.
Okay.
So.
All right. So, you know, that's the Small Business Administration, they've cut 45% of their funding. Right. We need to help small businesses grow, or there will be opportunity.
And I was really, they cut and they're still actually trying to reauthorize SIPRs and sitters. But frankly, my perspective is I was really concerned about graft or the corruption over time of any government program offering SIPRs and sitters for small business loans over a long enough period of time that other organizations can learn how to game that system in a stagnant competitive environment. So I was curious to see, okay, are they going to change something about it and then reinstitute some new form that less gamed by the same couple of companies? And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that.
Yeah, the main thing I think that they're trying to do is they're trying to cut costs so that they can increase the Department of Defense by 40%. That's the bottom line. It is that all of this talk about graft and corruption, you know, there is graft and corruption. There always has been, there always will be. We need to fight it. We need to minimize it. We need to, come out against it. We need to set policies. We need to do all these things, but that's not really what they're doing. They're not trying to cut graft and corruption. They're trying to scrape up enough money so that they can increase the Department of Defense by 40%. It's an excuse. What else do you think?
Nothing at the moment. I guess.
You wanna go for a third? Still got things you're thinking about?
Well, we talked about
There we
the
go.
Department of Education.
Yeah.
And I'm originally from Illinois,
Okay.
but I've lived here in Ellisville for 10 years. And I have children in Edgewood Public Schools. I feel very strongly that the voucher system here in Indiana, and I know you're federal, is really ruining public schools.
Yes.
I think that it's really a challenge, and I know it's not the same in other states. So what are your thoughts on that, and how with maybe like same thing, how are we gonna bring back Department of Education after it's been dismantled? How are we gonna invest in the things that we know are best for society? Given that it seems as though there are powers that be that want the vested interest in just Christian nationalism thriving in Indiana when it comes to voucher schools. Is there a plan? Is there an opinion?
Oh, yes, there's an opinion. Yes. Always. So the voucher system is undermining public education. If you want to grow an economy in rural Indiana, in the 18 counties in this district, we need a strong education system. Voucher system is undermining it. The way they sell these things is you take a lie and you wrap it around, or you wrap a little bit of truth around the outside of it. So are there issues with the public education system? Absolutely. It's a big system. Are there some children that benefit from the voucher system? Yes. Is it in the best interest of society that we implement this system? No. And this may upset some people. If the voucher system worked, if it provided a better education and made our society stronger, then we need to do what's going to make us stronger. It's not doing that. It's clear it's not going to do that. And that's why they're gutting the Department of Education, so that you won't see it. That is the big thing. At the federal level, it's about blinding you so that you won't know that the school system is failing your family and your community. It's all about that.
What is all the voucher system about?
The, excuse me. There is, if you look at it as a point on the line, the lieutenant governor has said that we really need to give money directly to the parents and then let the parents decide what they're going to do about educating their children. So they're going to completely take what they're doing in steps is trying to get to the point that that the school system does not have a reliable stream of money, and that some parents will take that money and will homeschool. Some will send their children to private religious schools. Some people will just take that money. And the kids won't get anything. That's where they really want to go, is complete realignment of how schools are funded. That it goes to the parents, and the parents will stroke a check back to the students or back to the schools. So the voucher system in Indianapolis, where there's lots of different schools all within driving distance, I could get a voucher and say, I can take this money to any school system that I'm willing to drive my kid to, and I can get them educated there. So if I'm in Noblesville, which has a very good school system, my son graduated from there, I could have taken that voucher money, gone to Carmel, okay, or I could have gone to a private school or the Catholic school that it sounds like a good idea. It has not shown itself to be as effective as what they say. And that's why the Department of Education, in their mind, has to go.
Just wondered, I'm involved with children because I'm a bus monitor on special needs
Okay.
at the school, so. So I'm involved with a lot of children and see a lot of different things, you know. A lot, I households.
You know, that's another area you talk about the Department of Education. One of their roles is to distribute money for children with special needs, because local schools can't afford to, it has a much higher cost associated with it. So there's federal aid that can help those children. The federal government agreed to fund 40% through the what was the law?
Individuals with disabilities education.
Idea, right? Thank you. They agreed to fund 40% of the incremental cost required to help educate children with special needs. Right? They've never gotten above, I think, about 14%. So they've never made that commitment. They've always been chronically underfunded. Children with special needs, that investment in their education, like everybody's children's education, over time, more than pays for itself. And it helps them become more productive, many of them to become more productive members of society. You know, everybody benefits when everybody's able to contribute. The thing that concerns me, the voucher system is wonderful. If you really want to pull that thread about the voucher system, if you have a child with special needs, that voucher is not going to cover that, and private schools are not going to accept a child.
That's what I was just gonna say. Can I ask how voucher schools treat special needs children?
They don't.
You do.
Right.
Like, no.
Right, because they can't afford to do it.
And they don't have to.
And they don't have to. So It is, and one of the things that really upset me, well, there's lots of things that have upset me, but in the last year, they cut education funding for special needs. When a child has special needs and has learning issues, many of them, if you can reach them at the right time with the right aid, then they can have a better life and a better trajectory. And if you don't, they're going to live with the results of that for their 50-year career. And it is sad that what's happening today, the kids we're failing today, when I'm old and gone, we're still going to be living with the consequences of those decisions. And that applies also to children that don't have disabilities, right? The failures we have in educating and supporting our children now are going to have long-term consequences and long-term economic consequences. And I really need these people. I need young people to grow up and become doctors and lawyers and take care of society, because I'm planning on living it for a little while after I'm done working. Yes, ma'am.
Also to these charter school, the charter schools, or I'm sorry, in particular, maybe vouchers, they use the phrase school choice, when really it's just another form of segregation. Now, having hosted several exchange students over the years, international exchange students, 3 of them from Europe, and one from India, one from India. Actually, but what I'm trying to get to is that the European students, so much more advanced in their education and their public education than we are here. And we live in a global society or economy. But my concern is that our kids are going to be so far, lagging behind because of our school system, that we're going to be left behind. And it's also, if we have an educated society, it is basically a form of national defense, defense against, or protection against the risk of being controlled by an authoritarian. So those are all my concerns, that how are we going to compete globally, or our kids are going to be competing globally? They're going to have to compete with these kids that are so much more advanced. I'm not talking about higher education. Once they get to higher education, maybe the United States is on par, but basic education is not the same quality.
You're right that it is a matter of national defense, and it is a matter of the stability of our society. It's also about the earnings potentials of people. One of the things you were talking about, starting your own business, that there are things that we need to do to open up opportunity for young people. And the first thing to open up opportunity is to ensure that they have a robust education. I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering, a master's in digital signal processing, and did some postgraduate work as well. I'm a strong believer in STEM. But there's also more to life than just math. I love math. I love technology. But to have a good citizen, we need to have people that are well-rounded as well. We need to have them have stimulation of opportunity beyond just, we're not just trying to educate future workers. We're trying to educate future citizens. And part of being a citizen is understanding society and having a well-rounded understanding of the world and be able to be a productive member of society. And I think we lose some of that talking about education. And there are areas that we need to be doing more. I'm very happy that we're focusing on STEM because I think that it's really important to future jobs. But music class and history class and theater and the arts, those are also things that are important in education if we're going to have a well-rounded community. So we are out of time. I'd like to thank all of you for participating and for the dialogue. So thank you all.
Do you have any questions for us? Feedback you're looking to solicit?
You know, really, I'm learning a lot just based on what people talk about in these things and what the concerns are. And I've learned a lot from these discussions. The one question that I have had is kind of the mix of a progressive perspective versus a conservative perspective among the audience. So. Okay,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
So the one thing I can say is